Welcome to the Deep Dive. You've given us your sources, and, well, our job is to pull out the crucial insights, those surprising details, the moments that make you go, aha, all so you can get up to speed, quickly and thoroughly.
Think of us as your shortcut to being well-informed, really making sense of the information you've shared with us.
Okay, so today we're taking a close look at innovation within small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs here in the Netherlands. And our guide for this is a YouTube interview with Kurt Kerpenstein. He's a Dutch entrepreneur, kind of interesting. He's got a foot in two worlds. Number plate manufacturing and building the machines that make them.
Yeah, Mr. Kerpenstein's experience, it offers a really valuable window into the Dutch business landscape. It touches on, well, pretty much everything from the day-to-day of running an SME to broader economic trends.
Exactly. We'll be diving into his own company history, how government regulations have sort of shaped his business, the automation innovations he's developed himself.
Which is quite something.
Yeah, his journey with patents, the whole climate for innovation in the Netherlands, the influence of things like affordable labor, deglobalization.
Tax policies, too, like that innovative box you mentioned.
Right, the innovative box, comparisons with Germany and Italy, and ultimately that whole interplay between businesses, workers, and government strategies.
And as always, we're keeping you, our listener, the learner, front and center. The aim is to deliver those unexpected insights, the key takeaways, in a way that's clear, keeps you engaged, and respects your time.
Okay, let's get right into it then with Kerpenstein's business. It's a family operation, started way back in 1965. Initially dealt in all sorts of goods before, focusing specifically on number plates.
And what's really interesting early on is the massive impact of government regulation on their growth. Around the year 2000, you had the introduction of the Euro plate.
Right.
Combined with this new rule needing proof of vehicle ownership to get plates, that dramatically changed the whole landscape for them.
Yeah, before that, getting a number plate was pretty informal, wasn't it?
Apparently so.
But suddenly, these new rules meant his business, which supplied plates for new cars via dealerships, saw like an almost immediate tenfold increase in turnover.
Tenfold?
Yeah. It's such a clear illustration of how legislation can just fundamentally reshape a market.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, actually, what other routine regulations have these kinds of profound, maybe hidden effects on businesses.
It really shows how a business can not only adapt to regulatory changes, but actually find pretty significant opportunities within them. They just focused on meeting the demand the new rules created.
So, okay, this massive surge in demand hits them. Their old manual production methods just couldn't keep up.
Nope, couldn't cope.
And this is where I think a really fascinating part of Kerpenstein's story comes in, because he had this background in mechanical engineering, automation, robotics.
Right, he had the skill set. So necessity really became the mother of invention here. He decided to engineer his own solution.
He designed and built his own automated number plate production machine, which is quite a leap.
It wasn't just about increasing volume, though. It was like fundamentally rethinking the whole process.
And the results were pretty striking. One single automated machine replaced the output of 4 full-time employees.
Wow.
Yeah, his workforce went from 18 down to just 5, all while producing more number plates. That's a huge gain in efficiency.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How often a really specific need within just one business can spark truly transformative innovation like that.
Absolutely. And he said it freed him up, too, to look beyond just making the plates themselves, allowing him to focus more on optimizing the entire manufacturing process.
Right. Broader picture thinking.
And the story takes another interesting turn here. He's now sold over 15 of these machines internationally.
Really? Where to?
Places like Egypt, Italy, Dubai, the Philippines, Austria, Switzerland. And he mentioned one's currently being built for Sweden.
So you've got this piece of Dutch SME-developed tech being adopted all around the world. That's impressive.
It really shows that evolution, doesn't it? From spotting a need in his own company to then becoming a supplier of that solution globally.
Yeah, it highlights a real entrepreneurial drive that went way beyond just his initial product.
Now, this innovation streak led somewhere else, unexpected. He got nominated for a National Innovation Prize.
Okay.
And that connected him with a consultant. And this consultant showed him the, let's say, financial upside of innovation through the tax system.
Ah, so like external validation or maybe just a chance encounter can sometimes steer an SME down a totally new and potentially very rewarding path.
Exactly. In this case, towards leveraging financial incentives for being innovative.
So what happened?
He actually managed to get a patent for his machine, which he notes isn't that common for SMEs. It's costly complex.
Right, it's a barrier for many smaller firms.
But this patent turned out to be absolutely pivotal because it allowed the income he made from selling these machines to be taxed under the Innovatie box.
Okay, the Innovatie box. Can you remind us what that is exactly?
Yeah, it's basically a Dutch tax rule designed to encourage innovation. It massively reduces the corporate tax rate down from like 25.8% to just 9%
Wow, that's a big drop.
on profits that come directly from innovative activities. So things protected by patents, for instance, it's like a financial reward for R&D and bringing new stuff to market.
Got it. So a major incentive.
Definitely. He initially got a 10-year agreement with the tax authorities for this.
So,
And it was even extended later, despite a German competitor trying to challenge his patent's validity.
so the patent held up.
It did, which really underscores the tangible value of protecting your intellectual property.
And it highlights that potential financial upside, right? Successfully navigating the patent process can free up serious capital for reinvestment, for more innovation.
But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit concerning. Kirpenstein was told, kind of off the record, that the government was considering phasing out the Innovatie box for SMEs, specifically when it's based on patent ownership. The idea was it might favor larger corporations instead.
Really? Why would they do that? That seems counterintuitive if you want to boost SME innovation.
Well, the rationale he was given, and again, this was informal, was that larger companies, multinationals, might threaten to relocate if their tax burden gets too high.
Ah, the relocation threat.
Whereas SMEs are seen as more tied to their local communities, less likely to pack up and leave.
So it suggests a strategic calculation, maybe, but one that could create a really uneven playing field. It makes you wonder if innovation policy could, kind of unintentionally, end up disadvantaging smaller, homegrown innovators compared to the big multinational players.
It does paint a picture where perhaps the concerns of large corporations hold more sway in policymaking than the needs of smaller domestic innovators, it feels like.
Well, it certainly highlights a potential imbalance in how innovation gets incentivized.
Yeah, it prompts you to consider if the tax system, despite aiming to help, might inadvertently put SMEs at a disadvantage, especially given how much they contribute to the economy and, as Kirpenstein's story shows, their clear capacity for innovation. Which brings us nicely to his next point. Kirpenstein strongly disagrees with this perception that Dutch SMEs aren't innovative.
Right.
He argues that if you only look at patent filings as your measure, you're missing a huge amount of practical, local innovation happening inside these businesses every day.
That's a crucial point, I think. SMEs often innovate because they have an immediate need, right? They need to solve a specific on-the-ground problem.
Exactly.
Their focus isn't always on getting patents or global protection. It's about finding better ways to do things in their own context. So innovation for them might just look like a clever process improvement or a unique adaptation of some existing tech.
He gives some really good examples, too. He talks about innovative SMEs in food processing, building specialized bakery machines, or in the fruit industry, developing apple sorting tech that can actually detect internal rot and even measure sugar content.
Wow, that's specific.
And of course, his own story with the number plate machine fits right into this. All practical problem solving.
These examples really showcase that diverse, often unsung innovation happening within Dutch SMEs. It's about continuous refinement, practical ingenuity, stuff that doesn't always end up as a formal patent, but is still really significant.
Now let's shift gears slightly. Another angle discussed is the role of cheaper labor.
Ah, yes, the labor question.
The interview touches on whether the availability of less expensive labor, say from Eastern Europe, might, in some sectors like horticulture perhaps, actually reduce the incentive to invest heavily in innovation and automation.
That's a valid point to consider. If businesses have easy access to affordable labor, the immediate pressure to invest, big capital in automation or other labor-saving tech might be lower. It becomes a trade-off, doesn't it? Labor costs versus upfront tech investment.
Kirpenstein brings up Frans Timmermans' view on the Dutch shipbuilding industry back in the 70s. The idea was that trying to prop up industries that just weren't competitive anymore, instead of encouraging them to innovate and adapt, ultimately didn't work. It feels like a lesson about needing to embrace change.
That connects to this broader trend people are calling deglobalization, doesn't it? This move towards more regional or national economic focus.
Yeah, exactly.
You see examples in U.S. policies, and maybe less visibly, some Dutch policies too, like tariffs on sugar or upcoming ones on non-EU steel and aluminum, linked to concerns about dirty energy. These shifts definitely influence where and how businesses choose to innovate.
And Kirpenstein also flags a really important factor specifically for the Netherlands: higher energy costs compared to many other regions.
Right, that's a constant pressure point.
It can put Dutch businesses at a competitive disadvantage, potentially squeezing their ability to invest in innovation if their basic running costs are already significantly higher.
It really underscores how interconnected all these factors are. Labor costs, energy prices, trade policies, they all shape the environment for innovation in a country.
The discussion also gets into the more human side of SMEs,
Right, the people aspect.
often being family-run businesses, having close ties with employees. That decision to bring in automation that might lead to job losses can be particularly tough, even if it makes perfect long-term business sense.
Yeah, that introduces the social dimension of innovation, those personal relationships, that sense of community within an SME. It can create a kind of natural resistance to changes that impact the workforce, even if those changes are ultimately needed for the company's survival or growth.
And related to that, he points out that, well, some entrepreneurs are simply more traditional. They're resistant to adopting new technologies, maybe even something as basic now as using email.
Yes. It reminds us that innovation adoption isn't uniform at all. Individual preferences, maybe just an aversion to change, can play a big role in how readily SMEs embrace new ideas or tech.
Interestingly, Kirpstein mentions his own drive to innovate. He says it came more from necessity, from problem solving, and actually the personal satisfaction of the work itself.
The enjoyment of it.
Yeah, rather than purely from profit motives or tax incentives, he kind of sees profit more as a report card for the business's success.
That gives a really valuable glimpse into the intrinsic motivation of some entrepreneurs, doesn't it? That desire to build, to fix things, to find fulfillment in the work that can be an incredibly powerful driver, maybe even more so than just the bottom line.
He also points out this sort of paradox, that SMEs might actually end up paying a higher overall tax rate than some large, highly innovative companies just because of the way different policies interact. It feels a bit counterintuitive.
It really highlights the potential for unintended consequences with complex tax regulations, and it raises questions about whether the system truly creates a level playing field for businesses of all sizes.
Which leads back to his critique of Dutch government innovation policy. He feels it's too focused on patents and might inadvertently disadvantage SMEs.
Right.
His view is that innovation often happens quite organically, naturally. It's not something you can easily steer from the top down with a central plan.
His point about the organic nature of innovation really resonates, I think. It often emerges from unexpected places, through informal experiments within businesses. So maybe government policies are most effective when they focus on creating a supportive ecosystem rather than trying to prescribe specific outcomes or pick winners.
He even gives an example of unintended consequences with tax breaks for hybrid cars, where the benefits apparently became much more generous than originally intended.
That's a good reminder, isn't it? That policy interventions, even with the best intentions, can have unforeseen, sometimes distorting effects on the market. It underscores how important careful consideration and a practical understanding of how businesses actually operate are when designing these policies.
He expresses a degree of skepticism towards really large-scale top-down initiatives, like the ambitious goal of phasing out natural gas in just 10 years. He suggests there might be a disconnect between policymakers and the practical realities SMEs face in implementing changes like that.
Yeah, it highlights the need for policymakers to really engage with SMEs to make sure regulations are realistic and don't impose impossible burdens or timelines on their operations.
Now, let's quickly touch on some international comparisons he made. He characterized Germany as having a more hierarchical, maybe more conservative business culture,
Okay.
which might, in some ways, hinder innovation bubbling up from lower levels within companies. He even mentioned the persistence of using formal titles, like Herr von Bardenwijk.
Interesting. It suggests that cultural norms and how organizations are structured can definitely play a role in shaping innovation dynamics within a country. A more top-down structure might not be as good at letting ideas flow freely from everywhere.
In contrast, he pointed to Italy, particularly northern Italy, as a major hub for machine building.
Yes.
And interestingly, he felt this success was driven more by regional expertise, tradition, skills clustered together, rather than direct government subsidies.
That emphasizes the power of regional specialization, doesn't it? The accumulation of knowledge and skills in a specific area can really foster innovation in certain industries. Sometimes that organic development, those local ecosystems, are incredibly effective.
He also touched on the often underestimated strength of Dutch SME manufacturing. They frequently operate as suppliers to bigger companies, like those in the supply chain for, say, ASML.
Right. So despite the Netherlands' image as primarily a trading nation, there's this really robust manufacturing sector within its SMEs. It plays a vital, though maybe less visible, role in the economy.
And he noted an interesting cultural difference, too. German SMEs often stay family-owned for generations, whereas Dutch SMEs seem more inclined to go public eventually.
Different paths, different priorities, perhaps.
Looking ahead, he discussed the challenges around sustainability, the increasing pressure on SMEs to achieve CO2 neutral production.
A huge topic now.
Yeah, and he raised some concerns about the practicality and maybe even the potential for fraud in some carbon offsetting schemes. Investing in wind farms in India or forests in Ethiopia.
It highlights that growing pressure, but also the real difficulties SMEs face in navigating complex, sometimes questionable solutions for reducing their environmental impact. How do you verify those offsets, for example?
He also talked about the bureaucratic burden, again, that disconnect between policymakers and the day-to-day reality of running an SME. He gave an example of increased taxes on overtime,
Right.
which can actually hinder businesses when they're facing labor shortages and need people to work more.
It seems counterproductive in that situation. These examples really underscore the need for policies to be flexible, responsive to changing economic conditions, avoiding those unintended negative consequences for businesses and employees.
He even mentioned how social policies, like maybe salary increases for women in education, can have unexpected ripple effects on their working hours because of the tax implications hitting harder.
Yeah, the interaction effects can be complex.
Finally, the conversation kind of delved into the fundamental nature of entrepreneurship itself.
What it means to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that ultimate responsibility for both successes and failures. The fact that SMEs are generally maybe more tolerant of mistakes, the crucial role of having a supportive partner, especially for handling admin,
Definitely need that support structure.
and just that blend of skills required, technical know-how, market awareness, administrative competence. It's a lot to juggle.
And he noted that innovation often involves cleverly adapting existing technologies from totally different sectors.
Right. Borrowing and reapplying ideas.
It provides a really well-rounded picture of what it takes,
Yep.
emphasizing the multifaceted nature of running an SME and the often ingenious ways innovation happens just through smart application of existing knowledge and tech.
So, okay, let's try and bring it all together. The key takeaway seems to be that Dutch SMEs are frequently highly innovative, often driven by pure necessity.
Practical problem solving.
But this isn't always captured by those traditional metrics, like patents. And while government policies aim to support innovation, they can have unintended consequences, and there's a concern they might end up disproportionately benefiting larger corporations.
And that point about cheaper labor potentially influencing the drive for automation in certain sectors is also quite important.
Definitely. And I think a particularly surprising detail that emerged was that potential shift in the Innovati Box policy.
Yeah, the idea that this significant tax advantage might be phased out specifically for patent-holding SMEs, possibly in favor of larger companies, that was unexpected.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Considering Kirpestein's experiences and all the examples we've discussed, how could government policies be, well, better crafted to truly support and encourage all the diverse forms of innovation happening within SMEs?
And maybe what are the broader economic implications if policies seem to prioritize certain types or sizes of businesses over others? It really encourages us to challenge our own assumptions about what innovation looks like, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And to really appreciate the critical role that SMEs play in driving economic progress and tackling those real-world problems,